It was a town that didn't exist. No name, no roads, no borders, no record. If you tried to find it on a Soviet map, you'd see only forest. But behind that forest was one of the most dangerous places on Earth. A town built on uranium, shrouded in secrecy, drenched in radiation, and erased from history. This is the chilling story of the city the USSR tried to wipe from the world, Ozyorsk, the Soviet Union's forbidden city. The Cold War wasn't just fought in the skies or with spies. It was fought underground, in bunkers, in labs, in reactors humming beneath iron doors. After World War II, Stalin was determined to match America's nuclear power. The US had dropped the atomic bomb. The Soviets had nothing. That had to change. Fast. So, in 1945, deep in the Ural Mountains, they built a city. From scratch. The official name was Chelyabinsk 40, later Chelyabinsk 65, but locals called it Ozyork. It didn't appear on any map, you couldn't write letters in or out, residents couldn't leave, foreigners couldn't visit. It was sealed. Surrounded by armed guards, barbed wire, and forest so thick it seemed like a natural wall. But inside that wall, a secret nuclear facility known only as Mayak. Mayak was the heart of the Soviet atomic program, a sprawling, high-sector complex of reactors, waste tanks, underground labs, and weapons assembly lines. It was here that the USSR produced plutonium for its first nuclear bombs. It was here that thousands of workers toiled in silence, under constant surveillance, under threat of punishment, often without protective gear. And it was here that some of the worst nuclear disasters in human history happened, long before Chernobyl. The people of Ozyorsk were promised paradise. They were told they were heroes. They were given privileges, better food, better homes, higher wages. But what they weren't told was the truth. The air was poisoned. The soil glowed. The river ran hot. The cancer rates were rising. Babies were being born disfigured, and nobody was allowed to ask why. In 1957, it happened. One of the underground waste storage tanks at Mayak exploded. Not from sabotage, not from war, but from poor cooling and neglect. The blast released over 80 tons of radioactive material into the air. It spread across 20,000 square kilometers. Entire villages downwind were contaminated. Forests turned gray. Rivers died. The fallout was later measured as the third worst nuclear disaster in history, after Chernobyl and Fukushima. But unlike those, the Soviet Union didn't evacuate. It didn't warn the people. It didn't admit the disaster. Instead, it launched a cover-up operation called Operation Radiation. Entire communities were quietly bulldozed. Survivors were relocated without explanation, without belongings. Some were never heard from again. Others were told to stay and keep working. They had no choice. The land was now classified. Ozyorsk was locked even tighter. The blast was renamed the Geisheim disaster, after a village nearby, to mislead outsiders. But foreign intelligence knew something was wrong. American satellites picked up radioactive clouds drifting east, livestock dying en masse. But without proof, the truth stayed buried until the whistleblowers. In the late 1970s, a Soviet scientist named Zores Medvedev began publishing reports in the West detailing the existence of a secret contaminated zone in the Urals. He had escaped, but others hadn't. Residents who tried to speak up were silenced, institutionalized. One woman who lost her child after bathing in the river was arrested for spreading panic. She was never seen again. The government continued to deny everything. Soviet maps still showed nothing. The region was blank. No names, no roads, just green and white, as if the land didn't exist, as if the people didn't exist. But Ozyorsk was still there, still working, still leaking. In 1967, another disaster. Lake Karachay, where Mayak had been dumping radioactive waste for decades, dried up during a hot summer. Wind carried radioactive dust across the countryside. It's estimated that standing on the lakebed for just 60 minutes could deliver a lethal dose of radiation. By the 1980s, it was officially declared the most polluted place on Earth. Finally, Mayak and Karachay had carefully declared the most polluted place on Earth. Yet, Mayak continued operating. The people of Ozyorsk continued working. Many were told that the deformities in their children were genetic, that cancer clusters were coincidences. Workers who complained were fired or disappeared. Some were sent to internal camps. The truth was treason. Only after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 did fragments of the truth emerge, leaked documents, survivor testimonies, independent scientists, now allowed to visit the region, confirmed radiation levels higher than anywhere outside a war zone. But the damage was done. Generations had already suffered, and many still didn't know what had happened to them. Even now, Ozyorsk remains a closed city. Access is restricted. Armed guards patrol its borders. Visitors need special permits. Foreigners are barred entirely. Inside, it looks like a peaceful, well-kept town. Soviet ephemeral murals, children playing, workers going to the plant, but just beneath the surface, the legacy of radiation lives on. A genetic time bomb passed from mother to daughter, father to son. So why did the Soviet Union erase Ozyorsk from maps? Because it was never meant to exist. It wasn't a city. It was a weapon, a machine built to manufacture destruction, and the people who lived there were just cogs. But perhaps the most chilling part of the story is that this wasn't unique. The USSR built over 40 closed cities, hidden from the world, some for weapons, some for research, some no one can explain. Even today, dozens of these cities still operate in Russia, under strict surveillance. They have code names, no phone lines, no internet, and no accountability. What happened in Ozyorsk is not just history, it's a warning about what happens when governments operate in total secrecy, when people are told they're patriots while being poisoned, when maps lie, and when silence becomes a weapon. In 2013, an environmental journalist tried to investigate the ongoing contamination around Mayak. He was arrested. His footage was deleted. His passport was revoked. But before his files were destroyed, one photo survived. It showed a child, barefoot, standing near Lake Karachay, no hair, holding a small yellow flower in her hand, smiling, oblivious. That image was never published, but those who saw it never forgot it. Today, Ozyorsk still does not appear on many modern Russian maps. Satellite views are blurred. Roads that lead to it are unmarked. And yet, it breathes, it pulses, it hides. If you're wondering where the next Ozyorsk might be, look again at the blank spaces, the no-go zones, the research areas, the towns with barbed wire and no signs, because the age of invisible cities isn't over. It's just better managed. And if you think it only happened in the Soviet Union, you haven't been paying attention, because secrecy is a currency used by every nation, and some towns disappear not because they don't matter, followers, but because they matter too much. If this story unsettled you, subscribe now for more forbidden truths, lost histories, and erased places. And tell us in the comments, do you believe towns like Ozyorsk still exist right now? Hidden in plain sight? History isn't always written in ink. Sometimes it's buried in fallout. This is Forgotten Diaries.